This is your host Salim bin Mohammad Rafi, and here is my YouTube channel Zamir Universal. The times we are living in, where one small, tiny, illegal, illegitimate state, a tiny speck on the global map, has hijacked the whole world's economy, has blocked the Red Sea, blocked the Mediterranean Sea, and now reached the corners of the whole world. The whole supply line from China all the way up to any part of the globe, Europe, South America, North America, has been affected. The cost of living has gone sky high. And one man, one stubborn, stupid, one mentally deranged, schizophrenic man cannot be controlled by this. That shows you the helplessness and the power of these evils, these sinners, these womanizers, these people who are bloodsuckers or vultures. And you can now understand why these people who are under the mask of Jewish religion are in fact the most dirtiest, the filthiest human being on earth. They are not even Jews, they are Zionists. I am here going to show you the actual Jews, which is a small percentage of these extra orthodox Jews who do not want to kill anyone, who do not want to serve in their army, who do not want to be part of the closing the medicine, electricity, water, throwing concrete into the newly dug wells of water, putting the people to the whole population of 1 point now nearly 9 million in Rafah to the verge of starvation and letting them drink the dirty, filthy sewerage water. Why you will have any sympathy? Anti-Semitism, when they are not Jews. How on earth the anti-Semitism applies to Netanyahu or his own bloody war cabinet and war criminals, or this self-claimed Zionist, this Joey, or this sleepy Joe, or this mentally deranged with a dementia, an old man, a weakest president, a puppet in the White House, who has vetoed and vetoed and vetoed again. So when Putin says, or the Chinese president says, that the criminal for the whole world is the United States of America, the father and the mother of all evil is the United States, and this is his adopted illegitimate child, implanted in the sacred most land of the prophets, where you see the Jews and they want to kill them. They are the only one who deserve to be Jews, and they are the only one who should not be insulted. Their graves should not be dug. They should not be facing any slander. And they are the one you can say, when you say anything about them or their religion, they maybe come under the classification of anti-Semite. No one else. No one, no Netanyahu or his whole family, all the way up to his grandfather. And same thing applies to all the people who just invaded Palestine, came to seek refuge. They were the scum of the society and leftovers of Hitler from incinerators and gas chambers who came and occupied this pure land. With these words, I want to show you the division of the map, and it's my advice to the Hamas, my advice is to Hezbollah, my advice is to the Houthis of Yemen, my advice is to Iran, my advice is to Syria, and my advice goes all the way to Jordan, Egypt, and Qatar, and anybody, even Mohammed bin Sulaiman of Saudi Arabia, that if they sit on it and the anger and the blood in the eyes of their public is going to overthrow them, there is going to be no kingdom, no more, anywhere around this, and you have to fight. You must listen what is mentioned in the Holy Quran, that go and kill those people who get you out of your homes. So when you have been ordained to do this thing, when you have been asked to avenge, but you will never ever kill an innocent or a newborn child. You will never ever pull a plug of oxygen and let the incubator or let the people on the life support die. And look at these Zionists This is a special breed between an animal and a civilized human being. They are not. Even a country like China, which faced all the criticism and became member of the United Nations much later, listen to his ambassador and listen to the American the representative at the International Court of Justice, that resisting forced occupation and then killing, when you resist it, it's not terrorism. It's in fact is self-defense. And it is not the self-defense by Zionists as they claim. They are now, I think, the guilty of world's all problems, including the economy at the moment, which is at stake. Look at the cargo ships which are being bombed, and look what happens if the fiber optic cables deep in the Red Sea are cut, and all the banking, all the financial transactions, all the orders, they will all stop. Communication will stop. The way of living which the world has reached after almost a century will come to a halt. Dread it, and get rid of this small speck. This is the time. Have a focus and take inch by inch all the area back from them, and leave a generous 30% for the only Orthodox Jews. Not a single Zionist should be left at the moment in the state of Palestine, and that it should be your goal. That will be a slap on the face of Netanyahu and his cabinet and Knesset, who say that we don't want. Who the hell are you? Don't. You came as beggars. You came as refugees. You seek refuge. You food. You wanted clothes. You wanted or giving dwelling. Look at one of your own extra-orthodox rabbi telling you that the Muslims always protected us. They gave us food. They gave us shelter. That's
Palestinian people use force to resist foreign oppression and complete the establishment an independent state is inalienable right, well founded in international law.
On the fourth day of the hearing of a case questioning Israel's decades-long occupation of Palestinian territories at the International Court of Justice, China, much like the rest of the dozens of countries presenting their argument at The Hague, criticized Tel Aviv for deliberately preventing Palestinian self-determination. However, it went one step ahead when it explicitly, in no unclear terms, defended the right of Palestinians to achieve self-determination, even through an armed struggle.
In pursuit of the right to self-determination, Palestinian people use force to resist foreign oppression and complete the establishment an independent state is inalienable right, well founded in international law. Various people freed themselves from colonial rule and foreign oppression to realize independent statehood after World War II. Their practices serve as convincing evidence for the right.
And the Chinese representative backed his arguments not with rhetoric, but by citing and quoting international conventions that protect this right.
Armed struggle in this context is distinguished from acts of terrorism. It is grounded in the international law. This distinction is acknowledged by several international conventions. For example, Article 3 of the OAU Convention on the Prevention and Combating the Terrorism of 1999 provides that, I quote, "The struggle waged by peoples in accordance with the principle of international law for their liberation of self-determination, including armed struggle, against colonialism, occupation, aggression, and domination by foreign forces, shall not be considered as terrorist acts."
However, Beijing stressed that genuine acts of terrorism are another matter. Israeli authorities since 1967 have illegally occupied the West Bank and East Jerusalem, part of Palestine under the United Nations Determined Division of Historic Palestine in 1948, running a system that restricts the citizenship rights of Palestinians, hampers their free movement, and strips them of ancestral lands. Between 1967 and 2005, Israel also directly occupied Gaza, and since 2007 has imposed a land, sea, and air blockade on the coastal enclave. China blasted United States' previous arguments on Israel's right to self-defense in the context of the relentless war Tel Aviv is pursuing in Gaza since October 7. It also took a veiled dig at the argument presented by the United States the day before, where it urged the court not to order unconditional and immediate withdrawal of Israel from the occupied territories without security guarantees, citing safety concerns. The Chinese representative called out Israel as a foreign nation occupying Palestine and stressed that the right to self-defense lies more with the Palestinians than with the Israelis.
It is more urgent than ever to proceed to a Palestinian state, one that also ensures the security of Israel and makes the necessary commitments to do so. In light of these considerations, the court should not find that Israel is legally obligated to immediately and unconditionally withdraw from occupied territory.
The exercise of the right to self-defense as an inherent right of states is contingent upon the occurrence of the armed attack against territorial sovereignty of a state. When can an occupying power invoke the right of self-defense? It hinges on whether the armed attack occurs in the occupied territory or within its own territory. In the occupied territory, the right of occupying power to self-defense depends on the legitimacy of the occupation per se. If occupation is unlawful, the occupying power can neither acquire territorial sovereignty nor resort to self-defense against armed attack that occurred in the occupied territory.
Beijing also countered Israel and its staunch ally Washington's suggestion to the ICJ that it should stay out of a bilateral issue between Israel and Palestine.
Others have asked you to broadly construe the questions and the law. They have asked you to try to resolve the whole of the dispute between the parties through an advisory opinion addressed to questions focusing on the acts of only one.
אסור ללכת לצבא גם אם הוא כן לומד או לא לומד. אפילו אם זה נחל חרדי, כאילו מיועד לחרדים.
It's a whole different army. When you come in Orthodox, it's with a different head. Coming to serve God.
20% of young men lose their religious identity while in the army. That's not a percentage which the Haredi world would be willing to tolerate.
We're in Jerusalem, and recently these streets have been the scene of violent protests and riots, but there hasn't been a Palestinian in sight. Instead, it's the Orthodox Jewish community who are furious with the army for trying to send their sons to war. In March of 2014, the Israeli government passed a law requiring the ultra-Orthodox, a community of mostly religious and conservative Jews known as the Haredim, to serve in the Israel Defense Forces. Previously, Haredi boys who studied in religious seminaries or yeshivas were exempt from Israel's universal conscription law, which requires all citizens from the age of 18 to serve in the army for 2 to 3 years. The decision drew fierce opposition from the ultra-Orthodox community, its leaders ordering that no one should comply.
I guarantee you it's not going to happen. No yeshiva student will serve in the army by coercion. He'll leave the country, he'll go into hiding, he'll go into the underground, or he'll go into jail.
We saw this sentiment echoed throughout the Haredi neighborhoods as anti-IDF posters were put up.
The poster is showing how the Israeli government is forcing the religious Jews to go to the army, but the army's values are not that of the yeshivot. There are many things in the army that go on that are, for a religious Jew, not permitted. And that's what you're seeing in this picture, that the religious Jew feels like he's being pulled into the garbage, being what goes on in the army is like garbage to us.
The ultra-Orthodox have always sheltered themselves from the influence of the secular world, including the military. This goes back to the very beginning of the State of Israel, when David Ben-Gurion struck a deal with the Haredi community, allowing yeshiva students to forego military service as long as they remained in the yeshivas, protecting and preserving the Jewish religion. The exemption has never been popular with the secular community, and through the years, there have been attempts to try and find a compromise, including a deal struck with the IDF and a group of Haredi rabbis that created the Netzah Yehuda, an ultra-Orthodox battalion made up of volunteer soldiers. But as the Haredi population grows at an exponential rate, what started as a privilege granted to less than 400 Haredi boys has become a loophole for nearly 60,000. The Haredi community's weak presence in the army and in the workforce has prompted criticism from mainstream Israelis, who see the community as a financial burden to the country as a whole. Vice News went to Mea Shearim, one of the oldest Haredi neighborhoods in Jerusalem, and the site of many anti-military protests. We ran into trouble almost immediately. The Haredim are notoriously cloistered and try to isolate themselves from outside influences. Our being in the neighborhood was no exception to this rule.
We jumped out of our car and a guy stopped, stared at us, started twirling his beard, and has now been following us down the road for the last 10 minutes or so. We pulled out the camera and he just launched himself at the cameraman. It's clearly a sensitive community.
We managed to make our way to meet Yolish Kraus, the unofficial operations director for the Eda Haredi, one of the most vocal and radical factions of the Haredi community who refuse to recognize the authority of the state and are taking action against the new laws.
זה שאסור ללכת לצבא גם אם הוא כן לומד או לא לומד. שואלים שבגיוס, לדוגמה, הם לא רוצים באמת, לא צריכים את החיילים. הם רוצים לגייס את החרדים כדי שלא יישאר חרדים. מי שהולך לצבא, בסוף לאט לאט הוא מדרדר, הוא נהיה חילוני. יש מידע עם שתי בנים שהם בגיל הגיוס, שתיהם קיבלו צו גיוס, והם לא ישנים בבית כבר, אחת לא ישן בבית כבר שנה וחצי, ואחת חצי שנה לא בבית. אני נלחם, לא בשבילי, אני לא אלך, הילדים שלי לא ילכו לצבא. אנחנו לא ישראלים, אנחנו יהודים. אין לנו שום קשר למדינת ישראל. אנחנו עם ישראל. מדינת ישראל ועם ישראל זה שתי דברים. אנחנו במתקפה כל הזמן, לא רק בגלל הגיוס. בזמן האחרון זה מאבק מי ישלוט. אני טוען שבסוף החילונים יפסידו במאבק. למה? זה רכבת שדוהרת לתהום. זאת אומרת, זה יורד. עכשיו, אנחנו גם ברכבת הזאת, רק אנחנו נזהרים להיות בקרון